A lot of times we watch review videos to see whether or not a product is worth upgrading to or whether the new version is better than the old version. And often the conclusion of those videos is yes. See, I have an X3 and it's changed the way that I film. It's completely replaced all of my other action cameras for the most part. It is small, it is versatile, and just look at the kind of shots that you can get with this camera. And so when the X4 was announced, I watched a lot of the review videos and they didn't answer some of my basic questions. Like, is this X4 better than this X3 and is it worth upgrading to? The answer is yes, but not for everybody. So here's what you need to know. Hi everybody, foXnoMad here, and today I want to help you travel smarter with my review of the Insta360 X4. Now this video is not a sponsored video. I don't do sponsored reviews at all, but I wanted to disclose that at the top because of some controversy that Insta360 has gotten itself into lately. More on that in a moment, but first, let's get to the camera. The Insta360 X4 is an action camera that has two lenses on both sides that allow it to get a 360-degree field of view. This means that in 360 mode, the camera is actually filming pretty much everything around it. It uses software to stitch those two images from the front lens and the back lens together. And then in the Insta360 Studio desktop or mobile app, you can reposition the footage any way you want. Let's say I'm filming an interview between you and me. With a regular camera, what I would typically do is film this way and then maybe turn the camera around to film myself, or maybe have two cameras, one that's filming that direction, your direction, and one that's filming my direction, right, to capture both sides. But with a 360 camera, what I can do is just set this up here, and then it's automatically just recording from this lens, and then it's recording from this lens. So if I have the camera just sitting here doing its own thing, in editing, then I can reposition the image however I want. So when I'm talking, I can have it showing me, and then when you're talking or listening and just looking so intent after you hit that subscribe button, I can, in edit, switch over to the image that's showing your side of the camera, and all of this is being done without me having to worry about anything while actually filming. So while you're editing, you can choose to show one angle or another angle and create single or multiple clips with a single recording. Again, it is like having several cameras in this one small device. Also, another cool thing about the X4 and the X3 is that when I'm recording in 360 like this, it will automatically focus the sound based on where I'm focusing the footage in editing. So for example, if I switch the focus while I'm editing on me, it should be picking up more of the sound here. And if there was somebody behind the camera I were interviewing, I could, when I switched over in editing and focused on that person, it would grab their voice. And if there was some, an event or a concert or music happening on the side, when I focus on that part of the footage, it would pick up that sound more. It would focus more on the sound. It's capturing from the microphone right now, just everywhere. But when I'm editing, what I focus on in the image is the sound that it will also focus on. Another really handy feature. It works very well on the X3 and the X4, and after filming several interviews this way, each time I'm surprised at the quality of the audio that these small cameras can capture. And because of their size and dual lens, cameras like the X3 and X4 can get some interesting shots from cars. When walking, it's almost like there's a drone following you around, and it will definitely spice up any kind of social media post or YouTube videos that you might be creating. In fact, since I got the X3, I use my drone a lot less simply because I can get the kind of establishing shots I want with this smaller, less conspicuous device. There's also the opportunity to create some trippy footage, and the Insta360 app has a lot of different filters, AI editing, and effects you can use to spice up a shot for social media, YouTube, or just for fun. The Insta360 X4 costs $500 and the X3 costs $400. And I would say if you had to be limited to a single camera, if you could only pick one camera aside from maybe your smartphone, I would say it would be one of these two cameras because it is just so incredibly versatile. You can get so many different kinds of shots. They're quite small, I would say, even though the X4 is bigger than the X3. This is the camera that you would take if you could only choose a single camera to travel with. You don't have to think when you're shooting with one of these 360 cameras, and it makes filming a lot less stressful because you're thinking less about the camera and more about what you're actually filming. You just need to be careful not to get too close to your subject, especially people and faces, with the sides of the camera facing them. Because the way 360 cameras work is they use software to stitch together the footage from both sides, both lenses, and there is this stitch line that becomes apparent in these smaller angles. Usually with backgrounds, it's not quite noticeable, but with faces, it definitely will be. You might also be wondering how I'm getting all of this footage from the X4 without this stick showing up. Well, the software, when you upload it to the Insta360 Studio app, automatically gets rid of this stick. So it is very convenient. It looks like I said there's a drone following you. You don't have to worry about editing this out. It does that automatically. And when you get more experience with the 360 camera, you figure out ways to sort of hide your wrist as well in the shots. You get really clever ideas and sort of creative with getting this out of the way, because if you look closely, if you're not sure, is that a drone shot? Is that a 360 shot? A lot of times you can tell because the person is holding something. So it just looks like they're holding nothing in the air, but you get really creative to sort of hide that when you're shooting with the 360 camera. But even then, it's just a really cool effect, and it makes it a lot easier to film with because the software is getting rid of this automatically. Now, this isn't necessarily a comparison video, it's more of a review of the Insta360 X4, but for those of you wondering, let me weave in where the X4 differs, for better or for worse. The X4 is noticeably bigger and heavier than the X3. It measures 46 by 123.6 by 37.6 millimeters versus the 46 by 114 by 33.1 millimeters and weighs 203 grams, 23 grams heavier than the X3. If you don't have an X3 nearby, then the X4 doesn't look that big. But next to the X3, the X4 feels a lot less pocketable. Alright, so I'm not quite sure if the camera is going to pick this up, but can you just see the difference on these screens? The X4 is a lot brighter and just a lot more crisp, whereas the X3 over here, it's just not quite as crisp. It's a darker image, it's not as sharp. The screen isn't as big, obviously, but it just sort of doesn't give you a good, accurate representation of what the camera lenses are actually capturing. I think this is probably as big as the X line of cameras can get before they become too large to be an action camera. The added size though comes with a bigger 2290 mAh battery that's needed to power the upgraded 5nm AI chip and give you 8K capability. Recording at 5K, the highest resolution of the X3, you get 67% more battery life, about 130 more minutes, or 60 to 7 more minutes when you're filming in 8K. Keep in mind though, when you're filming in 8K, it's going to take more space on your SD card, so you might want to get an extra large version. If you're using the X3 and going to the X4, you might want to get that bigger micro SD card. For comparison, if you're filming in 5.7K on the X3 on a 64GB micro SD card, you will get about 2 hours and 20 minutes of footage. Take that same 64GB micro SD card and put that in the X4, and you're only going to get about 50 minutes of footage. The added physical size of the X4 gives you bigger speaker and microphone vents, but also greater space inside of the unit for heat dissipation, which is even more important on the X4 than it was on the X3. See, the X4 gets noticeably hot when you turn it on, and once you start recording, especially in 8K, it gets even hotter to the touch. The X4 even shows you a warning when you switch it to 8K to make sure that you use it in windy conditions or while you're moving so that it doesn't overheat. And typically with the 360 camera, you're going to be hitting record on and off quite frequently. It's going to be more of a sort of grab some footage and then turn off the footage. And that kind of helps with overheating. But if you're going to be having this on for a sustained period of time, it might be an issue. Especially in hot climates like Thailand, where I was recently, my phone and larger A7C II began experiencing overheating warnings and shutdowns because once the internal components of these kind of small electronics get warm, they don't dissipate heat very well. In other words, once they get hot, cooling down will take time. In these conditions, my X3 saved me on multiple occasions where everything else had quit on me and I needed to film something that I wouldn't be able to get at another time. Even at less extreme temperatures, when filming in 8K, the X4 is going to struggle. For example, if you're out for the day and recording a concert, travel videos, or other extended footage in sunny conditions in particular, overheating is going to be more of an issue with the X4 than it was with the X3, which takes much longer to get anywhere close to shutting down due to overheating. So you've got this larger body to deal with heat dissipation, but a more powerful chip inside and the ability to film in 8K, which causes more heat, and a larger battery to power those new components, which again gives you more heat. And those are engineering problems that any small, powerful camera like the X4 is just going to run into. And if you've already got an X3, you've got to weigh it, is the extra size and weight worth it for you to go from this camera to this camera, knowing that it may come with some overheating issues? And I think the answer to that question is we've got to take a look at the footage. Let's talk about resolutions. The X4 can shoot up to 8K and the X3 can shoot up to 5.7K resolution. But what they mean by that is the resolution for the entire field of view, the entire 360 degrees. So when you edit the footage, you're actually cropping into that resolution. It is like a pie at 8K, but you're only serving 4K slices. On the X3, that 5.7K resolution gets exported to about 1080p. The difference is mostly going to be evident if you zoom in on an image. Neither the X3 or X4 shoot well at all in low light. Actually, they're pretty bad in low light. So you got to use these cameras in bright conditions. And when you do that, the differences are subtle. Now, the colors are more consistent and vibrant on the X4 than the X3, but it's not a massive difference unless you're looking at them side by side. It brings me to the point I was making at the beginning of the video, which is the X4 better than the X3? And I think the overall answer is yes, the X4 is better than the X3, but it comes with some trade-offs. That comes with a trade-off in size and in weight and the potential for overheating, especially depending on where you're going to be using this camera. Some other improvements on the X4 over the X3 is that they have removable lens guards, unlike the X3's awkwardly placed lens guards that you have to kind of stick them on and then good luck taking them off if they get scratched or damaged. Anyway, the X4 also has a few added features and a larger screen. These are just all better on the X4 than the X3. The X4 is $100 more than the X3, and if you've already got one of these X3, I don't think it's a must upgrade to the X4. It's kind of like a nice to have upgrade, but again, if you're filming in hot climates often, you might as well just stick with the X3 and then wait for the next version of the 360 camera. Whatever comes after the X4, you might just be better off waiting for that. The X4 to me feels kind of like an in-between product. Like, don't get me wrong, the X4 is a great camera, and if you don't already have the X3, then the X4 you'll be very happy with, even though it's already kind of warm. It's just been on standby mode for the last like 20 minutes or so, but it's kind of warm. Anyway, the X4 is a great camera. I'm not saying that it's not, but I have a feeling that on the next version of this, Insta360 is going to use a chip that just runs a little bit cooler. They might be able to make the internal components dissipate heat a little bit better, which gives you more battery life. I feel like there are going to be some significant improvements on whatever the next version of this camera is over the current version, the X4. Personally though, I would love to see this thing get back down to the size of this thing with the features of, you know, being able to film in 8K and all of that. I would love to see this form factor go back smaller, right? That's one of the things that makes this camera so great, is just how little they are. So I would love it if Insta360 could kind of get the size down from this closer to something like this. But on its own, I still think the Insta360 X4 is the most versatile camera you can get and a nice improvement over the X3 in some ways, but not all. There are trade-offs that you X3 users might not want to make, but for first-time X4 users, you won't notice because comparisons won't be the thief of your joy. That's my review of the Insta360 X4. And like I mentioned at the top of this video, be wary when you're searching for other reviews of the X4 because iPhonedo recently exposed that Insta360 has been asking influencers to not disclose when they've been sponsored by Insta360, which is an ethics violation and a legal violation, and also just makes it more difficult for you as a viewer to try to figure out which review is saying what and for what reason. Anyway, I'll link to that iPhonedo video down in the description. I'll also link to why I don't do sponsored videos also in the description below, so you can check those out. But I hope this review has helped you answer some of your questions about the X4. If you have any other questions though, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, hit the like and subscribe buttons. I'll have new videos for you every week, and I'll see you in the next video.